Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the wisdom of Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who offers powerful techniques for managing anger effectively. If you've ever struggled with controlling your temper or find yourself reacting impulsively, this video is for you. Stick around as we explore how you can transform your relationship with anger through Stoic principles. Anger is a universal emotion, one that we all experience at some point in our lives. It's an intense response to perceived threats, injustices, or frustrations. While anger can sometimes serve a useful purpose, motivating us to address wrongs or defend ourselves, it often does more harm than good. Uncontrolled anger can lead to impulsive decisions, damaged relationships, and long-term emotional and physical health problems. Understanding the multifaceted nature of anger and its potential consequences is crucial to managing it effectively. Let's start by breaking down the common triggers of anger. These can vary widely from person to person, but often include situations where we feel disrespected, treated unfairly, or misunderstood. For some, anger arises from external circumstances like traffic jams, rude comments, or workplace frustrations. For others, it might stem from deeper internal sources such as unresolved past trauma, chronic stress, or feelings of inadequacy. Regardless of the trigger, the result is often the same, a powerful surge of emotion that can cloud our judgment and lead us to react in ways we later regret. One of the biggest challenges with anger is its ability to hijack our rational thinking. When we're angry, the brain's amygdala, which processes emotions, takes over, and the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and impulse control, becomes less active. This is why anger is often described as a blind emotion. It narrows our focus to the immediate source of our frustration, making it difficult to consider the broader context or long-term consequences of our actions. For example, imagine a scenario where you're driving home after a long day at work. You're exhausted and just want to get home as quickly as possible. Suddenly, another driver cuts you off, nearly causing an accident. Your immediate reaction is anger. Your heart races, your muscles tense, and you might even find yourself shouting or gesturing at the other driver. In that moment, your focus is entirely on the perceived wrong that has been done to you, and your anger demands an immediate response. But what if that response leads to reckless driving, an altercation, or worse? The consequences of acting on your anger in the heat of the moment could be severe. This is where the teachings of Seneca and Stoic philosophy become invaluable. Seneca recognized that while anger is a natural human response, it is also a destructive force that must be managed carefully. He described anger as a temporary madness, an emotion that, if left unchecked, can drive us to actions that are entirely out of character and against our best interests. According to Seneca, the key to managing anger lies not in suppressing it entirely, but in understanding its origins, recognizing its signs, and developing the self-discipline to control our reactions. In today's fast-paced world, anger is more prevalent than ever. The pressures of modern life, work stress, social media, traffic, and the constant bombardment of negative news can all contribute to a heightened sense of frustration and anger. We live in a society that often glorifies quick emotional reactions, which can make it difficult to maintain calm and composure when faced with provocation. The challenge, therefore, is not to eliminate anger entirely, but to manage it effectively so it does not control us. For many people, the difficulty in managing anger is compounded by societal expectations and norms. In some cultures, expressing anger is seen as a sign of strength and assertiveness, while in others it might be considered inappropriate or a loss of self-control. These cultural factors can influence how we perceive and handle anger, sometimes leading us to either bottle it up or express it in unhealthy ways. The key is to find a balance, acknowledging and addressing our anger without letting it dictate our behavior or damage our relationships. Seneca offers a path forward, providing practical strategies for recognizing the early signs of anger, understanding its roots, and developing the self-discipline to respond in a measured and constructive way. By learning to manage our anger, we can improve our relationships, enhance our decision-making, and lead a more peaceful and fulfilling life. Understanding anger from a Stoic perspective begins with acknowledging that, like all emotions, it originates from our judgments and perceptions. According to Stoicism, it is not external events themselves that disturb us, but rather our interpretation of those events. This foundational Stoic insight, articulated by Epictetus, holds that our thoughts about situations, not the situations themselves, cause our emotional responses. When someone insults us, it is not the insult that angers us, but our belief that the insult is an affront to our dignity or worth. This understanding is crucial because it shifts the focus from trying to control external circumstances, which are often beyond our control, to managing our internal responses, which are within our power. This concept can be illustrated by imagining a situation where you receive critical feedback at work. The feedback itself is neutral, it's simply information. But if you perceive the feedback as a personal attack or as evidence of your inadequacy, it's likely to trigger anger or defensiveness. However, if you choose to interpret the feedback as an opportunity for growth or as a sign of someone's investment in your development, your emotional response might be entirely different. By shifting your perception, you can transform a potentially anger-inducing situation into a constructive one, identifying triggers and adjusting expectation. Seneca teaches that one of the first steps in managing anger is to recognize its triggers. By becoming aware of the situations, people, or thoughts that tend to provoke anger in us, we can begin to anticipate and prepare for these moments. This preparation allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Seneca advises taking a moment to pause and reflect before responding to a provocation. This simple act of delaying our reaction can give us the time needed to regain composure and think more clearly about the situation. Let's delve deeper into the idea of recognizing triggers. Seneca believed that understanding the root causes of our anger was essential to managing it. Often, anger arises when our expectations are not met, whether those expectations are about how others should behave, how situations should unfold, or how we should be treated. By identifying these expectations and examining whether they are reasonable or fair, we can begin to adjust them, reducing the likelihood of feeling angry when things don't go our way. For instance, if you find yourself frequently angry in traffic, consider what expectations you might have that contribute to this. Perhaps you expect that other drivers should always be courteous, that traffic should flow smoothly, or that you should never be delayed. These are understandable desires, but are they realistic? Traffic is unpredictable, and expecting it to always conform to your preferences is setting yourself up for frustration. By adjusting your expectations, accepting that delays and inconsiderate drivers are part of the experience, you can reduce the intensity of your anger in these situations. Seneca also encourages us to view the broader context of our lives when anger arises. He suggests that we should frequently remind ourselves of the impermanence of most annoyances. By adopting a wider perspective, we can see that many of the things that anger us are temporary and insignificant in the grand scheme of life. This practice helps diminish the intensity of our emotional responses. For example, if you're angered by a colleague's behavior at work, stepping back to consider your overall career satisfaction and long-term goals might help you realize that this particular incident is minor and not worth losing your peace of mind over. Empathy and forgiveness. Another key principle from Seneca is the idea of cultivating a mindset of forgiveness and understanding. He encourages us to consider the imperfections and limitations of others, recognizing that everyone is prone to mistakes. By developing empathy and understanding, we can reduce the likelihood of taking offenses personally and reacting with anger. Seneca also suggests that we should remind ourselves of our own faults and the times we have wronged others, which can help us be more forgiving and less quick to anger. For example, imagine a colleague who consistently misses deadlines, causing frustration and anger within the team. Instead of immediately reacting with anger, Seneca would advise us to consider the possible reasons behind this behavior. Perhaps the colleague is struggling with personal issues, facing challenges outside of work, or simply lacks the necessary skills or support to meet the deadlines. By approaching the situation with empathy and a willingness to understand, we can address the issue more constructively, offering help or seeking solutions that benefit everyone involved. Empathy extends beyond understanding others. It also involves recognizing our own humanity. Seneca teaches that we should be as forgiving of others' faults as we are of our own. When we hold others to unrealistic standards or expect them to be perfect, we set ourselves up for disappointment and anger. However, by acknowledging that everyone, including ourselves, is flawed and capable of making mistakes, we can cultivate a more patient and compassionate attitude, reducing the triggers for anger. The role of perspective. Seneca also emphasizes the importance of perspective in managing anger. He advises us to consider the bigger picture and the long-term consequences of our actions. In the heat of the moment, it is easy to forget that the things that anger us are often trivial and temporary. By reminding ourselves that most of the issues that trigger our anger will soon pass and that our relationships and peace of mind are far more valuable, we can diminish the intensity of our anger and respond more calmly. To illustrate this, consider a scenario where you're involved in a heated argument with a loved one over something relatively minor, like chores or plans for the weekend. In the moment, it might feel like the most important issue in the world, and your anger may drive you to say hurtful things. However, if you step back and consider the long-term consequences, how this argument might affect your relationship, the lingering feelings it could leave, you might realize that it's not worth letting your anger take over. By keeping the bigger picture in mind, you can choose to de-escalate the situation and address the issue calmly and respectfully. Perspective also involves recognizing the fleeting nature of life. Seneca often reflected on the shortness of life and how much time we waste on trivial matters. By contemplating our mortality and the limited time we have, we can reframe our anger as a distraction from what truly matters. When we remember that life is short, we may find it easier to let go of anger and focus on living peacefully and purposefully. Self-discipline and daily practices. Another powerful technique that Seneca advocates is the practice of self-discipline. He teaches that by regularly exercising restraint and control over our impulses, we can strengthen our ability to manage anger. This involves making a conscious effort to remain calm in challenging situations, even when we feel justified in our anger. Over time, as we practice this discipline, we become better at keeping our emotions in check and responding with reason rather than rage. Self-discipline can be cultivated through various methods, such as mindfulness meditation, journaling, or engaging in physical exercise. Each of these practices helps to increase our awareness of our emotions and develop the capacity to pause before reacting. For instance, mindfulness meditation encourages us to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing us to recognize the early signs of anger and choose a more measured response. Similarly, journaling provides an outlet for processing emotions and reflecting on how we handle challenging situations, offering insights that can help us improve. Consider incorporating a daily routine that includes mindfulness or meditation practices, specifically focused on managing anger. For example, a simple breathing exercise can be done whenever you feel anger rising. Take deep breaths, focusing on the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. This practice not only calms your nervous system, but also creates a momentary gap between stimulus and response, giving you time to choose a rational reaction. Another aspect of self-discipline involves setting personal boundaries. Anger often arises when we feel that our boundaries have been violated or when we take on more than we can handle. By clearly defining and communicating our limits, whether in personal relationships, at work, or in other areas of life, we can reduce the situations that lead to anger. For example, if you find yourself getting angry because you're constantly overcommitted, it may be time to reassess your obligations and learn to say no when necessary. This act of setting boundaries is not only a form of self-care, but also a way to preserve your emotional equilibrium. Physical exercise is another effective tool for managing anger. Regular exercise helps reduce stress, improve mood, and increase overall emotional resilience. When you engage in physical activity, your body releases endorphins, which can counteract the negative effects of stress and anger. Consider integrating regular exercise into your routine, whether it's running, yoga, or even a daily walk. Not only does this help manage anger, but it also improves your overall health and well-being. Premeditatio malorum, preparing for challenges. Seneca also offers a practical technique for managing anger, the practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves imagining potential challenges and provocations we might face in the future and mentally rehearsing how we will respond to them. By preparing ourselves in this way, we can reduce the likelihood of being caught off guard by anger and increase our chances of responding calmly and rationally. For instance, if you know that you're going to have a difficult conversation with someone who often provokes you, take some time beforehand to anticipate what might be said and how it could make you feel. Visualize yourself responding calmly, staying focused on the facts and not letting your emotions take over. This mental rehearsal strengthens your ability to stay composed when the actual situation arises. Premeditatio malorum can be extended to everyday life scenarios. For example, if you're aware that certain situations, like dealing with a difficult client or managing family conflicts, regularly trigger your anger, you can mentally rehearse how you would handle these situations. By doing so, you train your mind to stay calm and composed, even in the face of potential provocation. This practice can be especially useful in high-stress environments where tensions can escalate quickly. The goal is not to dwell on negative possibilities, but to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally so that if those challenges do arise, you are ready to respond with wisdom and self-control. Turning anger into positive action, Seneca also teaches that the energy of anger, rather than being suppressed, can be transformed into positive action. This Stoic approach suggests that instead of allowing anger to lead us into destructive behaviors, we can channel it into something constructive, such as determination, courage, or the pursuit of justice. By redirecting the force of anger into productive activities, we can turn a potentially negative emotion into a source of strength and motivation. For example, consider someone who is angered by social injustice. Rather than letting that anger fester and turn into bitterness, they could use it as fuel to advocate for change, volunteer for a cause, or educate others. This kind of constructive action not only helps address the root of the anger, but also brings about positive outcomes that can benefit others. Another example might be in the workplace. If a project goes awry and you find yourself frustrated with a colleague's performance instead of reacting in anger, you might use that energy to offer constructive feedback, help find solutions, or work on improving team dynamics. By focusing on what can be done to improve the situation rather than on what went wrong, you turn anger into a catalyst for positive change. The role of self-reflection in managing anger. A critical aspect of managing anger, according to Seneca, is the practice of self-reflection. Seneca encourages us to take time each day to review our actions and thoughts, especially in situations where we felt anger rising. By reflecting on these moments, we can learn from them and develop strategies for handling similar situations more effectively in the future. This practice of daily reflection not only helps us understand the root causes of our anger, but also reinforces our commitment to managing it constructively. Journaling can be an effective tool for this reflection. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to write down any situations that triggered anger, how you responded, and what the outcome was. Reflect on whether your response aligned with your values and how you might handle a similar situation differently in the future. This process helps you to identify patterns in your behavior and to make conscious efforts to change. For instance, you might notice that your anger often flares up in meetings when your ideas are dismissed. Through reflection, you could recognize that this anger stems from a deeper need for validation or respect. Armed with this understanding, you might work on building your self-esteem independently of others' opinions or practice assertive communication to ensure your ideas are heard without letting anger dominate your response. Mindfulness and Stoic meditation. Mindfulness, though not a term used by the Stoics, closely aligns with Stoic practices of being present and aware of one's thoughts and emotions. By being fully present in the moment, you can reduce anxiety and enhance your appreciation for life's simple pleasures. Integrating mindfulness into your day can help you manage anger by increasing your awareness of the emotional and physiological signs that anger is building. With this awareness, you can intervene before the anger escalates. A Stoic meditation that can complement mindfulness practices is reflecting on the day's events each evening. Marcus Aurelius, another prominent Stoic, often wrote in his meditations about the importance of reviewing the day's actions, thoughts, and feelings. This reflection allows you to consider whether you acted in accordance with your principles, including how you managed anger. By regularly engaging in this practice, you train your mind to be more aware and intentional, reducing the likelihood of anger taking control. The power of gratitude. Gratitude is another Stoic practice that can help manage anger. By focusing on what you are thankful for, you shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance, reducing the space for anger to grow. Gratitude helps you focus on the positive aspects of your life, which can put potential triggers for anger into perspective. When you cultivate a habit of gratitude, you become more resilient to the minor frustrations and disappointments that might otherwise provoke anger. Consider starting a gratitude journal where you write down 3 things you're grateful for each day. These can be small things like a beautiful sunset, a kind gesture from a friend, or a personal achievement. Over time, this practice can help rewire your brain to focus more on the positive, making you less susceptible to anger when things don't go as planned. For instance, if you find yourself getting angry because a project was delayed, instead of focusing on the delay, you might reflect on the aspects of the project that went well, or on the opportunity it provides to learn and grow. By shifting your focus, you reduce the emotional intensity of the situation, making it easier to respond calmly and constructively. Building a support system. Another important aspect of managing anger is building and maintaining a supportive network of people who encourage your growth and respect your boundaries. Surrounding yourself with individuals who understand and share your commitment to self-improvement can provide valuable support during challenging times. These relationships can serve as a source of strength, helping you manage your emotions more effectively. For example, having a trusted friend or mentor to talk to when you feel angry can help you process your emotions before they escalate. This person can provide a different perspective, helping you see the situation more clearly and reminding you of the strategies you've learned to manage your anger. Moreover, being part of a community that values Stoic principles can reinforce your commitment to living according to these teachings. On the other hand, it's also important to set boundaries with individuals who may contribute to your anger. If certain relationships consistently trigger negative emotions, consider how you might distance yourself from these situations or approach them differently. This doesn't mean cutting people out of your life entirely, but rather managing your interactions in a way that protects your emotional well-being. Continuous learning and personal growth. Engaging in continuous learning and personal growth is another way to manage anger effectively. Stoicism teaches that the pursuit of wisdom is a lifelong journey. By continually seeking to improve your understanding of yourself and the world around you, you equip yourself with the tools needed to handle life's challenges, including anger. This might involve reading philosophical texts, attending workshops, or simply setting aside time each day for self-improvement. By committing to this ongoing process, you develop a deeper understanding of your triggers, your values, and the strategies that work best for you in managing anger. For example, you might study different Stoic techniques for emotional regulation, such as cognitive distancing, which involves viewing your thoughts and emotions as separate from your core self. This technique can help you step back from your anger, observe it without judgment, and choose a more rational response. As you learn and grow, you become better equipped to handle the challenges that life throws your way, including those that provoke anger. Living with intention. Finally, living with intention is a vital aspect of managing anger. It involves aligning your actions with your values and goals, making conscious choices that reflect your priorities. When you live intentionally, you are less likely to be thrown off course by anger because you are grounded in a clear sense of purpose. This might involve setting personal goals that align with your core values, such as improving your relationships, advancing in your career, or focusing on your physical and mental health. By keeping these goals in mind, you can navigate challenging situations with a greater sense of clarity and control. For instance, if one of your goals is to build stronger relationships, you might remind yourself of this when you feel anger rising in a conflict. Instead of letting the anger dictate your response, you could choose to approach the situation in a way that fosters understanding and connection, in line with your goal of improving the relationship. Incorporating these strategies into your life can profoundly impact your overall well-being and fulfillment. By embracing Stoic principles, you prioritize self-awareness, emotional regulation, and intentional living, which together form a powerful defense against the destructive force of anger. The most powerful insight from Seneca on managing anger is the realization that anger is a choice. While we may not be able to control the actions of others or the events that trigger our anger, we can always choose how we respond. This central Stoic principle places the responsibility for our emotional well-being squarely in our own hands, empowering us to shape our reactions in a way that aligns with our values and long-term goals. Seneca teaches that anger, when indulged, is like a fire that grows stronger the more it is fed. Just as a fire consumes everything in its path, anger, if left unchecked, can consume our peace of mind, our relationships, and even our health. The key to managing anger, according to Seneca, is to starve it by refusing to give it the attention and energy it demands. When we feel the first stirrings of anger, we can choose to redirect our thoughts, focus on our breathing, or engage in a calming activity. By doing so, we interrupt the cycle of anger before it has a chance to take hold and spread. The analogy of anger as temporary madness. One of Seneca's most famous teachings on anger is his analogy of anger as a temporary madness. He compares an angry person to someone who has lost their mind, acting irrationally and destructively. This comparison is more than just a rhetorical flourish. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of letting anger control us. Seneca believed that when we are in the grip of anger, we lose our ability to reason and to act in our best interests. This loss of rationality is what makes anger so dangerous. It leads us to make decisions and take actions that we might deeply regret once the anger subsides. To illustrate this, imagine a situation where you are caught in a heated argument with a close friend. In the heat of the moment, you might say things that are hurtful or damaging, not because you truly believe them, but because your anger is driving you to lash out. Once the anger has passed, you may realize that the things you said were not only unnecessary, but also harmful to the relationship. Seneca's analogy reminds us that acting in anger often leads to outcomes that are contrary to our true desires and values. Recognizing this, Seneca encourages us to view anger as a form of weakness, a failure to maintain our rationality and self-control. By framing anger in this way, we can become more motivated to manage it and avoid its destructive consequences. Rather than seeing anger as the natural or justified response, Seneca asks us to see it as a lapse in our judgment, something to be corrected and prevented whenever possible. The practice of premeditatio malorum. Another key technique that Seneca advocates for managing anger is the practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves mentally rehearsing the challenges and provocations we might face in the future and imagining how we will respond to them. By preparing ourselves in this way, we can reduce the likelihood of being caught off guard by anger and increase our chances of responding calmly and rationally. For example, if you know that you have a difficult conversation coming up with a colleague who often provokes you, you might spend some time beforehand thinking about how the conversation could unfold. You might imagine the colleague saying something that would normally trigger your anger, and then visualize yourself responding with calmness and composure. This mental rehearsal helps to condition your mind to respond in a way that aligns with your values, rather than letting anger take control. This practice can be applied to a wide range of situations. For instance, if you find that you often get angry when dealing with a specific family member who pushes your buttons, you could use premeditatio malorum to prepare yourself for the next encounter. By anticipating the potential provocations and mentally rehearsing your calm responses, you train your mind to stay composed, even when faced with challenging situations. Seneca believed that this technique was not just about managing anger in the moment, but about cultivating a mindset of resilience and preparedness. By regularly practicing premeditatio malorum, you build a mental habit of staying calm under pressure, which can help you handle not just anger, but other challenging emotions as well. Transforming anger into determination. Seneca's teachings also emphasize the idea of transforming anger into a more constructive emotion, such as determination or resolve. Rather than suppressing or denying anger, Seneca suggests that we can harness its energy and channel it into positive action. This approach allows us to address the issues that trigger our anger without being consumed by them. For example, if you are angered by an injustice such as discrimination or unfair treatment, you can choose to transform that anger into a resolve to advocate for change. Instead of letting the anger lead you into destructive behavior, you can use it as motivation to take constructive action, whether that means speaking out, organizing others, or working towards a solution. This transformation of anger into positive action is a powerful way to ensure that your emotional energy is used in a way that aligns with your values and contributes to the greater good. Seneca's approach to anger is not about becoming passive or indifferent to wrongs, but about choosing how we engage with the world. By channeling anger into determination, we can remain active and engaged without letting our emotions control us. This approach also helps us avoid the burnout that can come from unchecked anger. When anger is transformed into determination, it becomes a sustainable source of energy that can drive long-term efforts for change and improvement. Real-life application: the power of choice. The power of choice in managing anger is not just a philosophical idea, it has practical implications for our everyday lives. By recognizing that we have the power to choose how we respond to anger, we can begin to take control of our emotions and our actions. Imagine a scenario where you are dealing with a difficult customer at work. The customer is being unreasonable and you feel your anger rising. In that moment, you have a choice. You can allow the anger to dictate your response, leading to a confrontation that could escalate the situation, or you can choose to remain calm. Listen to the customer's concerns and respond in a way that diffuses the tension. By choosing the latter, you not only avoid the negative consequences of an angry outburst, but also potentially turn a difficult situation into a positive one. This power of choice extends to every area of life. Whether you are dealing with frustrations at work, conflicts in your personal relationships, or even the everyday annoyances of life, Seneca's teachings remind us that we always have the power to choose how we respond. By making conscious choices that align with our values, we can manage our anger effectively and lead more peaceful, fulfilling lives. Seneca's vision of emotional mastery. Ultimately, Seneca's vision of managing anger is about achieving a state of emotional mastery. This doesn't mean suppressing our emotions or pretending that we don't feel anger, but rather learning to control our responses so that we are not controlled by our emotions. Seneca believed that true freedom comes from mastering our inner world, our thoughts, emotions, and reactions. By achieving this mastery, we become less vulnerable to the external events that might provoke anger and more capable of living in accordance with our highest principles. Emotional mastery, according to Seneca, is not a destination but a continuous practice. It requires ongoing self-reflection, discipline, and the application of Stoic principles in daily life. But the rewards are profound. By mastering our emotions, we gain a sense of inner peace and resilience that allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and wisdom. As we conclude this exploration of Seneca's insights into managing anger, it's important to remember that these teachings are not just abstract ideas. They are practical tools that can be applied in our everyday lives. Whether you are dealing with major life challenges or simply trying to handle the frustrations of daily life, Seneca's wisdom offers a path to greater emotional control and a more peaceful, fulfilling existence. By embracing the power of choice, practicing premeditatio malorum, and transforming anger into determination, we can take control of our emotions and live in a way that reflects our highest values. This is the essence of Seneca's teaching, the realization that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. And in that response lies our true power and freedom. To illustrate the effectiveness of Seneca's strategies, let's first revisit the story of a well-known figure who struggled with anger, tennis legend John McEnroe. McEnroe's career was marked not only by his incredible talent, but also by his notorious temper on the court. Known for his fiery outbursts, McEnroe's anger often overshadowed his skill, leading to penalties, fines, and a reputation as the bad boy of tennis. His emotional reactions were so intense that they became a defining feature of his public persona, sometimes eclipsing his achievements as an athlete. During the peak of his career, McEnroe's anger seemed unstoppable. He would argue with umpires, throw his racket, and shout at the audience, often letting his temper disrupt his focus. Despite his success, these outbursts had significant consequences. Not only did they affect his performance by causing him to lose focus during matches, but they also strained his relationships with coaches, fellow players, and fans. His anger became a double-edged sword, fueling his competitive drive on one hand, but alienating those around him on the other. It wasn't until later in his life that McEnroe began to recognize the toll his anger was taking on him, both personally and professionally. As he matured, he sought to understand and control his temper, turning to practices such as meditation and self-reflection, methods that align closely with Stoic principles. And McEnroe realized that his anger was not just a reaction to external events, but a reflection of his inner state. By learning to control his temper and respond more calmly under pressure, he was able to extend his career, improve his relationships, and find greater peace of mind. McEnroe's journey is a powerful example of how even those who seem to be consumed by anger can learn to manage it effectively. His story shows that with dedication and the right strategies, it's possible to transform a volatile temperament into one of calmness and control. This transformation didn't happen overnight, but through continuous effort and a commitment to change, McEnroe was able to reshape his relationship with anger, turning it from a destructive force into one that could be harnessed constructively. Now, let's shift to a story that might hit closer to home, a story about someone who could easily be any one of us. Meet Sarah, a successful marketing executive who often found herself overwhelmed by the pressures of her job. Sarah was known for her quick temper. She would often snap at her colleagues when things didn't go as planned, leading to a tense and uncomfortable work environment. Her anger wasn't just affecting her professional life, it was spilling over into her personal life as well, causing friction with her family and friends. Sarah's temper had become a defining feature of her personality, and it was beginning to take a toll on her health, as she frequently experienced headaches, high blood pressure, and insomnia. Sarah's journey with anger began in her early career, where she quickly rose through the ranks due to her hard work and dedication. However, with success came increased responsibilities and higher stakes. Sarah began to feel the weight of constant deadlines, the pressure to perform, and the challenge of managing a team. As these pressures mounted, she found herself increasingly irritable and quick to anger. Small setbacks or mistakes by her team would set her off, leading to explosive reactions that left everyone on edge. One day, after a particularly heated argument with a co-worker over a missed deadline, Sarah decided she needed to make a change. The argument had been over something relatively minor, but her reaction had been anything but. She realized that her temper was not only hurting her relationships at work, but also eroding her credibility as a leader. After the argument, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of regret and the realization that her anger was controlling her, rather than the other way around. It was then that Sarah came across Seneca's writings on anger. She was struck by Seneca's insight that anger is like a temporary madness, a force that takes over our rational mind and drives us to act against our better judgment. This description resonated deeply with Sarah, who recognized that in her moments of anger, she often felt as if she were out of control, saying and doing things she would later regret. Determined to regain control over her emotions, Sarah began to apply Seneca's teachings to her daily life. She started with the practice of self-reflection, dedicating a few minutes each evening to review her day. During this time, she would reflect on moments when she felt anger rising and analyze what had triggered those emotions. Was it a missed deadline, a critical email, or perhaps a perceived slight from a colleague? By identifying these triggers, Sarah began to understand that much of her frustration stemmed from her perfectionism and unrealistic expectations of herself and others. Through this process of self-reflection, Sarah also started to notice the physical signs of anger: her quickened heartbeat, tense muscles, and shallow breathing. By becoming more aware of these early warning signs, she was able to intervene before her anger escalated. For instance, when she felt her temper rising during a meeting, she would take a deep breath, count to 10, and remind herself of Seneca's advice to pause and reflect before reacting. This simple technique helped her to maintain her composure and respond in a way that was calm and measured, rather than reactive. Sarah also embraced the practice of premeditatio malorum, mentally preparing herself for potential stressors at work. Each morning, she would spend a few minutes imagining the challenges she might face that day: a difficult client, a tight deadline, or a tense team meeting, and rehearsing how she would respond calmly and constructively. By doing this, she found that she was less likely to be caught off guard by anger and more able to handle stressful situations with grace and poise. As Sarah continued to apply Seneca's strategies, she found that her anger became less frequent and less intense. She was able to maintain her composure in situations that would have previously set her off, and her relationships with her colleagues began to improve. Her team, once wary of her temper, started to see her as a more approachable and supportive leader. Sarah's health also benefited from her newfound emotional balance. She slept better, felt less stressed, and even noticed a decrease in her headaches and blood pressure. In addition to her professional life, Sarah's personal relationships also improved. Where she had once been quick to snap at her family over small annoyances, she now found herself more patient and understanding. She began to approach conflicts at home with the same calmness and reflection that she practiced at work, leading to more harmonious interactions with her loved ones. Over time, Sarah realized that the changes she was making were not just about managing anger, they were about transforming her entire approach to life. One evening, after a particularly challenging day at work, Sarah reflected on how far she had come. A year earlier, a day like this would have left her stressed, angry, and exhausted. But now she felt a sense of calm and accomplishment. She had faced the day's challenges without losing her temper, and instead of feeling drained, she felt proud of how she had handled herself. For Sarah, this was a turning point, a realization that she had the power to control her anger and, by doing so, improve every aspect of her life. Sarah's journey is a testament to the power of Stoic principles in managing anger. By following Seneca's guidance, she was able to transform her relationship with anger, leading to a more peaceful, productive, and fulfilling life. Her story shows that no matter how ingrained our habits may be, with dedication and the right tools, we can change. We can learn to manage our emotions, to respond to life's challenges with calmness and wisdom, and to live in a way that reflects our highest values. For those watching, consider Sarah's story and think about how it might apply to your own life. Do you find yourself getting angry at work, at home, or in other areas of your life? What are the triggers that set off your temper? And how might you start to address them? Remember, as Sarah's experience shows, change is possible. By embracing the wisdom of Seneca and the principles of Stoicism, you too can learn to manage your anger and create a life that is more peaceful, balanced, and fulfilling. Whether you relate more to McEnroe's public struggles or Sarah's quieter, personal journey, the message is the same. Anger does not have to control you. With the right mindset and strategies, you can take control of your emotions and transform your relationship with anger, leading to better relationships, improved well-being, and a more intentional life. In this video, we've taken a deep dive into the wisdom of Seneca and the Stoic approach to managing anger, one of the most powerful and potentially destructive emotions we experience. Anger is a natural human reaction, often sparked by feelings of injustice, frustration, or perceived threats. Yet, as Seneca so eloquently teaches us, while the emotion itself may be inevitable, our response to it is always within our control. It is this realization that marks the beginning of true emotional mastery. We started by exploring the fundamental Stoic insight that it's not the external events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of those events. This perspective shift is crucial because it empowers us to take responsibility for our reactions rather than feeling at the mercy of external circumstances. When we understand that our anger is rooted in our judgments, our expectations of how others should behave, or how situations should unfold, we can begin to see that these judgments are often unrealistic or misaligned with reality. By adjusting our expectations and focusing on what we can control, we set the stage for a more balanced and composed response to life's inevitable challenges. Throughout the video, we delved into Seneca's practical strategies for managing anger. We discussed the importance of recognizing our triggers and the role of self-reflection in understanding the deeper causes of our anger. Seneca teaches us to pause before reacting, to take that crucial moment to breathe, reflect, and choose our response deliberately. This simple yet powerful practice can prevent anger from escalating and allow us to handle situations with greater wisdom and poise. We also explored the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, as a way to prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for potential challenges. By anticipating possible provocations and rehearsing our responses, we build resilience and increase our ability to stay calm under pressure. This mental preparation is not about expecting the worst, but about being ready for whatever comes our way so that we can face it with composure and clarity. One of the most profound lessons we examined is the idea that anger is a choice. Seneca reminds us that while we may not have control over the actions of others or the events that trigger our anger, we always have control over how we respond. This insight is incredibly liberating because it shifts the power back to us. We are not victims of our emotions. Rather, we are the architects of our responses. By choosing to respond with calmness and rationality, we maintain our dignity, preserve our relationships, and act in accordance with our highest values. We also looked at the concept of transforming anger into a constructive force. Instead of letting anger consume us and lead to destructive outcomes, Seneca encourages us to channel it into determination, resolve, and positive action. Whether it's advocating for justice, improving a situation, or simply standing up for what is right, this transformation of anger into a force for good is one of the most powerful ways to ensure that our emotions serve us rather than hinder us. The personal stories we discussed, from John McEnroe's journey to control his temper, to Sarah's transformation in managing her workplace stress, serve as powerful reminders that the principles of Stoicism are not just abstract philosophical ideas. They are practical tools that can be applied in everyday life, regardless of the circumstances. McEnroe's public struggle with anger and eventual embrace of self-reflection and mindfulness shows that even the most intense emotions can be tamed with the right approach. Meanwhile, Sarah's story demonstrates how the application of Stoic techniques such as self-reflection and premeditatio malorum can lead to profound personal growth and improved relationships. Both stories highlight that change is possible. No matter how ingrained our habits may be, with dedication and the right tools, we can learn to manage our emotions more effectively. By following Seneca's guidance, we can transform our relationship with anger, leading to a more peaceful, productive, and fulfilling life. As we conclude this exploration into Seneca's teachings on managing anger, it's important to recognize that the journey towards emotional mastery is ongoing. It's not about achieving a state of perfect calmness at all times. That's unrealistic. Instead, it's about cultivating the awareness, discipline, and wisdom to navigate our emotions more skillfully, to respond to challenges with grace, and to live in alignment with our values. The Stoic approach to anger management is rooted in the understanding that our greatest power lies within our ability to choose our responses. This is where true freedom resides. Not in controlling the external world, which is often beyond our reach, but in mastering our internal world. By developing the ability to pause, reflect, and choose our actions deliberately, we become the true masters of our fate. For those who have been following along, consider the lessons from this video and how they might apply to your own life. Reflect on the situations that typically trigger your anger. What are the underlying judgments or expectations that contribute to your emotional reactions? How might you begin to shift these perspectives? Think about the practical strategies we've discussed: self-reflection, premeditatio malorum, transforming anger into determination, and consider how you can incorporate them into your daily routine. Remember, the path to mastering anger is not about suppression or denial. It's about understanding, managing, and channeling this powerful emotion in ways that align with your true self. It's about making choices that reflect your deepest values and aspirations, rather than being driven by momentary impulses. By embracing these Stoic principles, you're not just learning to manage anger, you're cultivating a life of greater peace, resilience, and purpose. You're building the capacity to navigate life's challenges with a steady hand and a calm heart, ensuring that your actions are guided by wisdom rather than by emotional reactivity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the teachings of Seneca. Whether you're dealing with anger in your personal relationships, at work, or in other areas of your life, I hope you found these insights helpful and that they inspire you to take control of your emotions and live more intentionally. The principles we've discussed today are not just tools for managing anger, they're keys to living a more fulfilled, balanced, and meaningful life. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you struggled with managing anger? Which of Seneca's strategies resonates most with you? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you join a community of like-minded individuals committed to living a more intentional and stoic life. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.